Symbolism. Symbolism everywhere. Okay, so the other day I got a chance to watch The Platform. I had done a reaction and review to it a few weeks ago. I couldn't tell you exactly when. It's been a little bit. And I remembered that I was intrigued by the concept, and I liked also that it was in Espanol, so that I could have a little, more practice at listening comprehension and stuff like that. I did start off listening to this completely in Spanish with Spanish subtitles, and I was following along, but let me tell you, I was having to pause a lot to look up the definition of words or phrases or whatever, and, after about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, screw this. It's going to take me like a whole week to finish this movie. So I just switched over to the English subtitles, but I kept the Spanish just because, at some point, even if you're listening with, or, you're reading the subtitles in your own language, the words can kind of creep in there, and you can pick up a few words, maybe, a word or two here or there that you didn't know, and maybe you learned it. So, okay. The Platform. All right. This film it's a little complicated for me to explain how I feel about it. I'm going to tell you right off the bat that as soon as it was done, I was captivated the whole time because I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on and how was it going to end up. But I will say this, as soon as it was done, I didn't like it. Not a fan, you guys. Didn't care for this movie too much. At all. However, excuse me, allergies, pollen is bad, and I've been outside. So, I will say this, that don't let that dissuade you, please, from checking it out, because, different movies, they're not always for everybody. This movie was not for me. It was very well done as far as, style and editing and flow, stuff like that. It was very, very dark. But for me, like a lot of times, I don't mind symbolism in films. A lot of times. But for me, like, it has to be wrapped in a package that is overall entertaining and enjoyable, if that makes any sense. So this entire film, it's nothing but a commentary / symbolism on like different political ideologies like capitalism or, environmental, listen to me, economic ideologies like, let's say, capitalism versus socialism / communism. That's pretty much what this was about. Except they wrapped it up in this story of these people in this hole, and there are many levels and hundreds of levels, and people at the top, they lack for nothing. They can have anything that they want, and the people at the bottom, they basically have to, like scratch for the scraps, fight for the scraps, and the platform comes down to each level. You know this by the trailer, but the platform comes down to each level, and people, they have a certain amount of time in which they can eat, and they can't keep anything for themselves. They have to let the rest go. So obviously, as you can imagine, the people at the bottom of this tunnel or whatever, the tower or whatever they're in, the people at the bottom, by the time the food gets to them, there's like nothing there. So they could potentially starve to death. And, obviously, it's also a commentary, not just on things like capitalism versus socialism, but also just a commentary on human nature. Humans can be, by nature, very selfish creatures, especially when we feel like our life is at stake, or, our life is in danger. Obviously, we're going to do whatever we feel we need to do in order to protect ourselves. And, there are some people that try to rise above that and help others even while they themselves are in danger. And it doesn't always work out well because it's difficult to do that when you're trying to take care of yourself too. So anyway, it was an interesting commentary on things we already understand really pretty much about people in general. And also it was interesting with regard to its commentary on things like capitalism and socialism / communism. So obviously, it presents capitalism as this very, stark, awful sort of type of, situation. People at the top have everything, people at the bottom, they're suffering. And yet at the same time, while presenting the socialism / communism aspect of it, you also see the tendency for violence to be used in order to try to advance that particular agenda as well. And I don't want to get too specific, but you'll know it when you see it, when things happen. So it's kind of like, you could kind of take it to where the filmmaker is not necessarily condoning one over the other. Though in this case, it did feel to me, as someone who's just kind of inherently not a fan of socialism and communism, it did feel to me like it was a little bit more leaning or balanced sort of against an ideology or economic ideology like capitalism. But yet at the same time, there is some, he does offer some stuff to sort of, try to counterbalance that. It just feels like, oops, sorry. Hold on a minute. Okay, where was I? Sorry, I had to stop and do something. I think I was saying something about how that it felt like that the narrative of the story was definitely balanced more on the negative aspect with regard to capitalism as opposed to the other side. He does try to offer some counterbalance, but it still feels to me like I kind of could tell where the filmmaker was coming from as far as his narrative. I saw a video today. I think it was today or yesterday. I can't remember. But I saw a video that talks about the different themes in this movie. And they did a really, really good job of sort of going over, the symbolism, what this meant, the narratives, and explaining the ending, which I will tell you right now, tiny spoiler alert, but not huge spoiler alert, but tiny spoiler alert. The ending is pretty much an open ending. So you don't really have any full resolution. It's up to you to sort of decide. And I'm not a big fan of films like that. And that might be part of the reason why I was not happy when it was done, when it was over. I mean, I think the first words, I was watching this, I was playing this, my husband was in the room, and he's from Mexico. So obviously, he can understand everything, but I'm sitting there reading the subtitles. But I think the first words out of my mouth when I was done was, "Oh, well, that sucked," because that was my initial thoughts about it. I was not a fan. I do not plan to watch this movie again. However, it's so heavy on themes and symbolism. That's what I said, symbolism everywhere. It's so heavy on that people who really like that sort of thing, you may really enjoy this movie. And people who don't mind open-ended movies, you may also really enjoy this film. So, clearly, sorry. Watch it for yourself. I know that it's got pretty high reviews. I think audience, I looked on Metacritic. I can't remember what Rotten Tomatoes. There are no audience scores yet on Rotten Tomatoes. But the official critic scores, obviously they gave it fairly high reviews. I don't know, maybe something in the high 70s or low 80s. But of course, I could see official critics really eating something like this up. I mean, I That's kind of a given. I go to Metacritic, and Metacritic audience and critic reviews are pretty evenly matched at like the mid 70s or 7 point, whatever their system is, 7.3, 7.4, around there. Very, very evenly matched. I personally, this is one of those times where I disagree with not only the official critics, but I also disagree with the audience. Sorry, I also disagree with the audience, just because this film was not to my personal satisfaction or enjoyment. But, you know, obviously there's people that enjoy stuff like this. I'm not one of them. It's not so much that I don't like symbolism, like I said, or commentaries on various different things. It's just, it has to be wrapped up in an enjoyable package for me, and this just was not that. I don't know if I would have felt that it was enjoyable if there was an ending that felt a little bit more concrete. Not sure, couldn't tell you. This was one of those types of horror movies. Okay, it's quite disturbing. I mean, when I say disturbing, look, I watch horror movies a lot. I've seen some really crazy, nasty stuff. There's been very few films that I've watched that are so disturbing that they actually make me feel sick to my stomach. Yeah, I was grossed out by some of the stuff I saw in here, but I'm gonna tell you, okay, when I think of horror movies that really disturb me, like at my core, make me just feel so bothered by what's being shown that I actually feel physically sick, there's only one that comes to mind right now. There might be others, but the one that comes to mind at this moment is Bone Tomahawk. Oh, and you guys will know what I'm talking about. If you have seen this movie, you will know the scene that I am referring to. That was one of the most disturbing scenes I have ever seen in a film. And I have not watched the movie called, what's it called, The Nightingale? I'm not interested to see that movie, but I've heard that one's pretty dang disturbing too. Maybe I would feel the same way if I saw it, but I'm not interested. So there are disturbing elements and disturbing moments in here, really gross, just kind of like, oh God, you know, it's just like the thought of something and the desperation and what it can drive people to do. But while it was revolting and gross, when I say disturbing, yeah, disturbing, but not Bone Tomahawk level disturbing, I'll just say that. But it was, you know, it's not something that I will return to, as I already said, but it's probably worth, you know, I feel a little bit, I don't know. It's like I say, I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. And I'm not, and I, at the same time, I feel like I don't necessarily want to encourage people to see it because I didn't like it very much at all. It might be worth your while if this is the type of film you're into. Open-ended, heavy on the symbolism, heavy on the political and social narrative, commentary type thing. Yeah, maybe you will really like it. But yeah, not me. However, as far as technical stuff, things like that, cinematography, you know, pacing, and like I said, editing, it was fine. You know, the Spaniards, I think the filmmaker was a Spaniard. I know it takes place, the characters are Spanish. They do a really good job, like the quality of their filmmaking is really good. Especially like some of their shows and things. Some of my favorite foreign language shows are from Spain. I would love to watch more foreign language shows like from Mexico because I prefer that dialect of Spanish. But the problem is there's not really a lot of good quality filmmaking coming from Mexico as far as I'm concerned, you know, as far as like the technical stuff and how it looks, and it's nice, it's very well done, it's nice and polished. That's really coming more from Spain. But the downside is the dialect is so different. It's a little harder for me to understand Spanish. And they use different idioms and expressions than, like, let's say they do in Mexico. Some of the things that they say in Spain that are considered perfectly fine to say in Spain, in Mexico would be considered a very bad word. So, you know, I run into the risk of picking up things that might not translate so well when I'm talking Spanish over here in the States. Anyway, whatever. That was a tangent, like I tend to do. But, yeah, so that's kind of my mumbled, jumbled, just kind of hectic thoughts on this particular movie. If you guys have seen it, let me know what you think about it. You probably, I have a feeling probably a lot of you would like it more than I did, since I'm diverging from what the, I'm diverging from what the general consensus is among a lot of the people that have thrown their, their ratings out there about this. But I don't know. I shall pass on any second viewings, but let me know what you guys think if you ever get a chance to watch it. It's on Netflix, so, if you've got a Netflix subscription, or even if you don't, I'm sure there's probably ways you can get it. So, yeah, that's that, and I'm going to wrap this up and maybe do another review or check out a trailer or something. Okay, you guys. Hasta luego.